So what is survivorship bias, and why do these cognitive biases plague us when we're making important decisions, including those that may change the course of our careers? Tune in to learn more about this topic and why I believe survivorship bias is something we all need to be aware of when we're looking at big decisions in our businesses and our lives. Hi, my name is Stephen Joseph, and I'm the president and founder of EvoStream Communications. Today, I'm going to talk about survivorship bias and why specifically it's important when we make career decisions. I'm not only going to talk about what survivorship bias is and why we need to be aware of it, but also a counter argument to why we can ignore it sometimes when we do make our career decisions. So, first, what is survivorship bias? Essentially, what it is a cognitive flaw that we make in a decision-making process because in our sample or our selection that we're analyzing, we exclude the failures. So we're only looking at the successes. Now, a classic example of this that's often used when describing survivorship bias is from World War II. Planes would come back and the aeronautical engineers would analyze the defects in the plane that were caused by the strikes from flak or, opposing fire. Now, what they were failing to do here is analyze all the planes that didn't make it back, that weren't successful. The planes that didn't make it back had taken on the strikes that were severe enough or in the correct places to affect the structural integrity of the plane so that it couldn't fly. Now, if you want to make improvements and you want to address the gaps in the integrity of the unit, you need to really look at where the critical strikes were that ultimately caused a fatal crash. So, that's an example of survivorship bias. So for the purposes of this discussion, I want to focus on the career decisions and the biases that we often are encountering when we look at the very, very successful tip of the iceberg outliers that are able to achieve amazing results that we're all looking to. So I've talked a little bit about this before, specifically in getting advice from sort of, guys that are in the middle of the pack, because I think that oftentimes those are more relative people to talk to about decisions you're making. However, the reality is we all are looking at, achieving our highest level of goals. And sometimes we look at stars to do that. So the problem again, where it runs into a survivorship bias is, for example, Bill Gates is known for having been a high school dropout. But what we fail to educate our youth on is that, high school dropouts oftentimes can end up on the streets. They could be homeless, they can be, people who actually encounter a ton of obstacles in their lives because they don't have that high school degree. And we look at folks like Bill Gates as these outliers and sometimes point to them as reasons why it's okay not to finish high school. So in that example, we're failing to include the failures, right? Another example might be, looking at a pro athlete and saying, if you really work hard, you can become a pro athlete, and that's a viable career path for you. And of course, what we're excluding is all the people out there, the vast majority, that will stop at the collegiate level or even the high school level and ultimately may sacrifice something from an education standpoint or even a career standpoint because they followed their dreams in sport. Now, as a counter argument to that, I will call upon a story that Jim Carrey tells. And Jim Carrey talks about his father, who also, he believes, could have been a comedian. And he basically says that, his father chose to take the more responsible path. And that was to take a 9-to-5 job and ultimately make sure that he could put food on the table for his family. And what ended up happening is his father, he loathed that job and ultimately got fired. And in doing so, not only did he failed at something he hated. So Jim Carrey's point is, if the possibility is that you're going to fail in anything anyway, why not fail at something that you love, right? And of course, as most of us know, when you do something you love, the rate of success is actually higher, so long as your expectations are in line with what success is, meaning you don't need to become an Elon Musk in order to be a successful entrepreneur. You don't need to become a professional musician in order to become a happy musician, right? You may just be able to play on the weekends with your band until you're, in your 60s, right? And that might be your definition of success. But when it comes to cognitive biases, there are kind of two ways to looking at this. Number one, you need to make sure that you're not setting your sights on the outliers, the very, very few people that are able to break through and ignoring all of the challenges and all the failures that everyone else incurred. So that's number one. Number two, though, is the counter argument there. And of course, this is sort of a quandary, and why this is a difficult decision in most people's careers is if you do go for it and you do go for the thing that you love, there's a high chance you're going to be successful in your own right, in your own way. And if you don't go for what you love and you choose a more responsible or less risky path, there's always the chance that you're going to fail there anyway. I mean, let's be honest, so many people get laid off from their jobs. And ultimately, they think to themselves, I regret taking that path, spending 20 years invested in a corporation, when I really could have done something I loved. Maybe I would have made less money, but I could have figured that out. So survivorship bias, again, is where we exclude the failures in our decision-making process and analyzing only the successes and the people that really broke through. And realizing that a lot of those people are the minority. They are not the majority. They are outliers. So 2 books that I think you could kind of benefit from in reading more about your cognitive biases, and specifically this one. The first that comes to mind is by Malcolm Gladwell. It's called Outliers. The second book is called Thinking Fast and Slow. The author escapes my name right now, but I'm sure someone out there can put it in the comments. But essentially, that again is a book that is filled with cognitive biases that are really interesting. Some of them are really cool because in that book, they actually go through some mathematical examples that you can kind of play along with. And ultimately, it helps you to pause and make better decisions and consider all of the outcomes before you make these decisions. So hopefully that was interesting and kind of explained a little bit more about survivorship bias and why I think it's really important when you're making life and career decisions. Again, the counter argument to that is also an interesting one, so consider that as well. And as always, I love it when you comment in the post. If you feel like this was a great subject, please share it with your network. That always helps get the message out there. And of course, you can always direct message me. My full contact information is on LinkedIn in my profile. And I love hearing from all of the folks that listen to these videos. Thanks and have a great day.